So my name is Terence Kwok. I'm the founder of Humanity Protocol. It's really interesting for me to be in an AI conference because what we are doing is more crypto and blockchain than AI. But I think in terms of the problem that we're trying to solve, there's quite a lot of relevance because I think the way we think about what Humanity Protocol is doing, it's actually solving some of the dangers that AI actually causes. I think there's a lot of good things that's coming out of AI, but there are also a lot of problems. So Humanity Protocol is a blockchain, and what we're focused on is identity. And unlike any other blockchain that exists, we natively have integrated what we call verifiable credentials into Humanity Protocol. And the idea for us is to allow people to be able to prove things. And the reason why we think it's important very soon for people to be able to prove things is because AI is making it harder and harder for us to trust anything that's going on in the internet world, right? When we look at any sort of website that we're going to, on a day-to-day basis, you're solving CAPTCHAs, trying to prove that you're a human being, doing math formulas, picking out traffic lights. When we look at the internet, over 50%. Almost 50% of internet traffic, I think this was 2023. By last year, I think it was 51 or 52% of all internet traffic is already coming from bots, right? And then you add in AI agents, you add in all the ability for people to essentially replicate data very, very quickly with AI. We actually think it's becoming super important for us to be able to verify things. And so what we've decided to create is something called proof of humanity. And with proof of humanity, the whole idea for us is to allow people to prove various attributes about themselves. And we're starting with probably one of the most important attributes, which is whether you're a human being or not, right? So we're starting with that, but then the idea for us is to also allow people to prove other things, whether maybe it's your education, maybe it's your employment, maybe maybe it's your loyalty status in an airline, your nationality, whether you're sanctioned, et cetera, et cetera. Historically, I think it's not been that important for people to prove these things because, number one, there's not really too many benefits to falsifying these things. And then the cost of actually faking it is pretty high. Right now, what we're seeing with AI, as you can imagine, with deepfake, with ChatGPT, with LLMs, et cetera, the cost of actually doing this is becoming lower and lower, right? If we look at, for example, recently, the conflict between Iran and Israel, we see videos of the attacks popping up on Twitter. And it's really interesting because right now, every single Twitter video that we see, the very first few comments is always somebody asking if this is real. Historically, that would never be the case. Like if you look at sort of these sort of videos, it's either real or it's probably from a Tom Cruise movie. But what we're seeing now is, whether it's with Google Veo or any sort of AI models, the cost of actually generating fake content, the cost of pretending to be somebody else is becoming very, very cheap. Right? And so what we decided to create is Humanity Protocol. And the idea for us is that we're creating a unique identifier for every human being in the world. The 5 million number is a little bit outdated because right now we just hit around 9 million people at this point. Raised a little bit of money from VC funds in the crypto space. And the whole idea is to build an infrastructure layer, not just for Web3 or the blockchain world, but actually for the internet, or even in real life, right? The whole goal for us is to be able to allow people to prove any single thing. We're leveraging technologies, this is sort of crypto speak, where we can allow people to prove their rider rating, prove their loyalty tier, prove their developer contributions, et cetera, et cetera. And we actually think this is really, really important because if you think about sort of some of the biggest tech companies right now, there's a big focus on building AI. I think, apart from OpenAI, which is doing that as an independent company, you have Google and you have Facebook or Meta that are also very focused on building their own models. And if you think about the fact that companies like Apple or Amazon actually are not that focused on building AI, there's one reason we think as to why that's the case. It's very much tied to the fact that if you look at Google and Meta, these are traditionally advertising businesses, where they generate the bulk of their hundreds of billions of dollars in revenues from advertising. And we actually think when it comes to this age of AI, advertising is going to change very substantially. Number one, because what I said earlier in terms of content production, in terms of publishing, a lot of stuff is going to be AI generated. You're going to have social media, you're going to have Twitter, et cetera, flooded with bots. And then on the consumption side, what we're also seeing is just a lot of bot traffic, AI agents commenting with each other, et cetera, et cetera. It's really becoming harder and harder to tell what is actually real, what is a human being who's a potential consumer, versus AI agents just commenting on each other's threads. And so, from our perspective, what we're actually trying to do by proving first that somebody's a human being in the digital world, and then moving on to allow people to prove various things, is actually potentially creating what we call the biggest identity graph, right? When we look at sort of Google, historically, advertising is all about intent. I'm telling Google, I want to search for this. I want to buy a car. I'm looking for a Japanese restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. That's how Google is able to serve me, relevant advertising, and they're able to generate revenues. If we look at the next step of that, which was Meta and Facebook, it's all about the social graph, right? The social graph allowed Meta to know, oh, you claim that you went to this school, you claim that you're friends with this guy, you claim that you're 25 years old and working at this job. And that provided Facebook with the ability to also create targeted advertising. Similarly on the LinkedIn side, right? We actually think moving forward, it's becoming easier and easier for any of these things to be fake, and it already is, right? For me to pretend to be somebody else, all I really need to do is create a new email, create a new Facebook account, use AI to generate a bunch of content on Instagram so that I can be somebody, and then create also a LinkedIn profile, and it can all be fake. Right? And so what we're actually trying to do with Humanity Protocol is, number one, verify that you're a human being, and then leverage what we call trusted identity validators to prove that to verify various things, and then leverage zkTLS to also allow you to create data enrichment, right? It might be the case that I can prove that I am an avid gamer and I spend 20 hours a week on Steam, or I'm a frequent traveler because I have X status on Marriott or whatnot. And this actually creates a big ecosystem where users now get to actually choose what data they actually want to share and potentially monetize from that. This is technical stuff. It's not that interesting. But yeah. So I think a little bit different from sort of how the whole Web 2 or traditional internet world works is that for Humanity Protocol, the whole idea for us and what we've built into our blockchain and our core platform is that ultimately people get to control all the data about them. They get to share. Whenever they want and to whoever they want, right? And they can also revoke access if they choose to not want to share that piece of information. And I think moving forward, this is going to be super important because, we're already seeing cases where people are pretending to be other people. We're seeing cases where there are scams, there are frauds, deepfake videos. And, where I'm from, Hong Kong, I think it was just a year ago, there was a big company, there was an international company where somebody got scammed for $25 million because, they got because the finance director's employers, the CEO, CFO, COO, all had deepfake videos created of them, and then in a Zoom meeting, essentially approved a payment, right? So what we're trying to do here is solve this problem, and I think it's really interesting because I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we started working on this, most of the investors that we were pitching didn't really understand the need for this. And then over the last 2 years, as we started building this, we got more and more interest from everybody, whether it's the crypto community or whether it's investors, simply because right now, if you go on Instagram, you go on TikTok, you see videos that you cannot differentiate from real or fake. And going on any sort of website, you're looking at content where you don't know whether it's written by a human being or not. You go to a LinkedIn profile, see a picture, you don't know if that's a real person or not. And so we actually think over time, in the coming months, years, there's going to be a bigger and bigger need for what we're doing. Yeah. So, and just to close up with some of the use cases that we think Humanity Protocol enables. As I mentioned, it'd be really interesting. I think AI generated content is great. AI agents are great. Bots are great. I think the very key thing for us is not necessarily to say filter out AI agents or bots, but at least give people or consumers the ability to differentiate, right? It would be really interesting if we could say, you know what, if Twitter or if, whether it's TikTok or, on Facebook, at the very least, I could say, you know what, this content is generated by a human being, or this account is controlled by a human being rather than just a ChatGPT wrapper, right? And then the other thing is also looking at something like LinkedIn, right? It would be really interesting if we could say, you know what, if this guy claims to work for Google, he really does work for Google. Or if this guy claims that he's working for, if this guy claims that he went to Harvard, there's actually a verifiable credential tied to Harvard for this individual, right? So that's sort of the world that we envision will be needed over the coming, probably in the coming months. It's already going to be super important. And then on the crypto side, there's a thing called airdrops where people give out free tokens and free money. And so the whole idea of civil resistance and making sure that it's not going to farmers who are creating unlimited number of accounts is a pretty big problem for the crypto world, because it's tens of billions of dollars that are being distributed on an annual basis. Other sort of things, right? Online one person, one vote, looking at reputation building, as I mentioned, being able to consolidate all my accounts from travel, on Cathay, on KrisFlyer, on Marriott, et cetera, for data enrichment. These are all the things that we're trying to do with Humanity Protocol. And I think, as I mentioned, it's probably looking at solving a problem where a lot of people don't realize is going to be coming to us very, very soon. Largely because of the crazy, impressive technology that AI is bringing to the world. Yeah, so I mean, it's crypto. So this is not financial advice, but the whole idea for us is Humanity Protocol is powered by a token. It's not launched yet, but what we're trying to do is allow for there to be value accretion for this infrastructure, right? The idea is that we are allowing people to verify things about themselves, and then we're creating an open API platform and SDKs so that different sort of applications, different sort of enterprises will be able to make use of our technology to verify things. So we certainly imagine a world where down the road, maybe there's a dating app, a Tinder, whatever, where it's only real people, or where if somebody claims to work somewhere or go to school somewhere, it's actually verified, right? Or a LinkedIn or a Facebook or different sort of programs and projects and platforms, and we have a bunch of them already building on top of Humanity. So the token is not live yet. So if you search for it and you see something like this, it's fake. But definitely look out for it. And then so for Humanity Protocol, in blockchain speak, we have something called Testnet. So the whole product for roughly our 9 million users are currently on Testnet. We're going to be migrating to mainnet very, very soon. If you want to go check it out, scan the QR code. It's really cool because what I mentioned earlier is that we have verifiable credentials, and one of the key things that we're doing is sort of leveraging biometrics also to help for proof of personhood and verifying that you're a human being. So that's my time for today. Thanks a lot.